Welcome back, everybody. It's November 1st. John Arvosis here at the Arvosis Report, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. to talk about the latest news from Ukraine and Israel. Getting my mic set up. I was having a little microphone malfunction when I was waiting, or not, my light actually malfunctioned. I couldn't get my lights to work, so that's why I'm a minute late here trying to get my mic set up on my lapel, or whatever you call it. 1 second here. Oops, hello. All right, let me get my TikTok rolling here on my iPad. Woo, and then we're ready to roll. All right. Hang on here. Let me, beep, beep. How's everybody doing? I am good. I had chocolate and a little tea, so I'm roaring. I'm revving to go. Here we go. Live. All right. Go live. I think we're good. Yes. There we go. Hello, all. Woo. Hey, Manda. All right. Flip my camera. Boom. There we go. Anyway, welcome all. Ooh, get my shirt tucked in. Woo. Much better. All right. TikTok is on its way. Hey, Jens. Anne, how are you? Woo. Anyway, what's going on, folks? Oh, boy. Just another busy day for me. Lots of news. I didn't even put the list. There's so much today. I was gonna, sorry guys, at least put up some, but there's so much. Hey, Big Hawk, there's just so much news today. So I wasn't able to really put a thing on the screen. So sorry, I apologize. Ow. I just realized my microphone's got a sharp thing on the bottom. That's not very good. Anyway, thank you, Shane. How are we doing, folks? Welcome from the crime capital of Washington, D.C. We got this like insane notice from the police. I'm gonna read you part of this. This isn't while we're waiting for folks to join us. You know how the first couple of minutes, thank you, Alex. The first couple of minutes we wait for folks to join us. So I wanted to show you this really quick. Thank you, Succeed. So we're gonna wait a minute or two for folks to come in, because that's how we start the show. But I want to read you something that the police sent out to the media a couple days ago that just like blew my mind. I mean, we really do have crime problems. Thank you, Macabre, in this country. It's pretty bad. Oops, hang on. Now I'm losing it again. It's never been a terribly safe country. Whenever I talk to my friends in Europe, they're always like, oh my God. But listen to this. Hey guys, just welcome. We're kind of waiting a minute or two to start until folks get here, but I wanted to read you something first. Thank you, Alex. Very nice. Oh, here we go. Oh, yes, here we go. Oh, thank you, Big Hawk. So listen to this really quick while we're waiting. Welcome, everybody. We're going to start the show in a minute, but I like to sort of just wait a minute or two for folks to come in to get the notification. But listen to this. So we've had so many carjackings in Washington, D.C., that the police sent this notice to one of the local news stations. Listen to this. When you are out on the road, always keep your doors and windows locked, even if it's hot out. Drive in the center lane to make it harder for potential carjackers to approach your car. This is the nation's capital, folks. Avoid driving alone. Travel with someone whenever possible, especially at night. So in the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., it is not safe to drive alone. You're supposed to drive in the middle lane in case someone tries to get you, you can get away. When you come to a stoplight, thank you, Kronos. When you come to a stop, leave enough room to maneuver around other cars. In other words, when you're at a stoplight, you're supposed to stop with a distance between you and the car in front of you in case a carjacker comes up so you can zoom around. I mean, thank you, Pedro. Sorry, folks. We're just waiting to start the show, but I was telling folks, thank you, Cami, of insane story in the paper, in the news yesterday, that we've had so many carjackings in Washington, D.C., that the police are now warning people, among other things, not to drive alone in the nation's capital. I mean, and how to stop at stoplights and stop signs, thank you, B. Smith, with enough room between you and the car in front of you that you can get away. I mean, and if you see somebody in trouble, like lying in the road or something, don't stop. Don't call the police, but don't stop. Because it could be like one of those thank you, Nicola, like one of those movies on TV where they lie in the road to pretend like they're injured and they rob you. It is anyway. Oh my God. Thank you, Alex. Freaking, I've always hated this town. I've always hated living here. I mean, I live here because of the politics, but oh my God, I hate this town. Oh, what do you do? Anyway, hey guys, so we can get rolling here. All right. I just wanted we always wait a minute or two anyway for folks to start. Because we've like to sort of the notice goes out on YouTube and TikTok and stuff. It always takes a minute. But welcome everybody. I am John Aravosis. This is I was going to say this is Washington D.C. Coming to you from Washington D.C. The way that my show works is I cover the latest news. Thank you, Adam. Cover the latest news from I've been covering the latest news from Ukraine actually since the war broke out March of last year. In the last few weeks have started covering Israel as well because I think it's an important conflict. Because my show has always been foreign policy anyway, or U.S. politics, but foreign policy. It seemed like a natural segue to also add. Hi from Sderot, really? Hi, Layla. Wow, she is very close to Gaza. I recognize that town. I think you're very close to Gaza, right? From what I recognize the name of that town that we've had a lot of CNN correspondents staying there. Thank you, Courtney. Wow, that's scary. So anyway, so what I'm doing is that's what I thought. Wow. Oh, that's scary. Wow, Layla. Hey, Rachel. So anyway, so the way the show works, thank you, Lifestar, or I should say Hazel. The way the show works is, Courtney, I will go through the news and I'm going to do Israel and Ukraine both. And then second half of the show, we'll do question and answer, your guys' opinions, Sometimes as the show is going on, thank you, Martin. If I see your comment, I may jump in and respond to it or whatever. It can be difficult when I'm doing the first part of the show because I've got like a lot of notes. And if I'm going through my notes, it can be hard to read all the comments. So forgive the first half with the comments. Secondly, so gifts. I am always a big fan of gifts. I could do Ukraine first. I could do. The only thing is this time, I will say, thank you, Lord J. Wow, very nice gift from Lord J. Thank you so much for that. I could do Ukraine first. The only thing is, you know what? Israel is only like 2.5 pages of news. The rest of it's Ukraine. I've got like 5 pages of Ukraine news. So I'd rather do Israel first because it's not that much news. There's a lot more from Ukraine. So I feel like let's do that because it'll still shake it up more that way. Otherwise, I don't mind switching them at some point. But there's more. There's a lot more from Ukraine. In any case, so the way the show works is, as I said, the gifts I very much appreciate from you guys because I do this full time and I do it for free and I'm not wealthy. So the way I'm able to afford doing this, thank you, Adventures, is your guys' gifts because frankly, it helps me pay the bills and it lets me do this. So please do keep the gifts coming. I will always do a shout out if I see your gift on TikTok, especially the bigger ones like Big John, the ones that show up on the screen. I will do the smaller ones are hard because the smaller ones, there's so like the hearts, there's so many. I can't, I can't call out 17,000 hearts, but thank you for them. Thank you, Adam. And on TikTok, on YouTube, excuse me, I will always do a shout out as well for the super chats and the super stickers, but also because YouTube has a special little thing, you can ask questions, super chat questions. You pay for them, thank you, Peachum, as a donation, but I will always get to those as the next thing I talk about, and I will always answer a super chat question. So thank you for that. All right, guys, let's get rolling here. So I will start with Israel, but only because, as I said, there isn't that much. There's news, but there's a lot more Ukraine news today. Thank you, Lupo Italiano. So Israel, there was a captive hostage, depending what you want to call it, released today, but not the ones you're thinking of. This is kind of interesting. I was talking maybe a week ago about how nobody was really talking about the issue of all the foreigners that were in Gaza, basically meaning, non-Palestinians, whatever you want to call them, who were in Gaza, and Hamas was not letting them leave. And the Brits came out last week, or a couple of days ago at least, and said, these guys are hostages. I mean, they were not letting Brits, Americans, Westerners, Japanese, you name it, leave the country, leave the territory because they were keeping them as bargaining chips. So what happened today was a number of people were released, but they're not the actual hostages that Hamas took on October 7th when they invaded Israel. Those have not been released, but a number of the other, I will call them captives, because they weren't like tied up with zip ties, but they were refusing to let them leave the area because they were keeping them as bargaining chips. And by the way, not just as bargaining chips, but Hamas reportedly was trying to get, in exchange for these Westerners and others being released from Gaza, they were trying to get Israel and others to agree to release Hamas prisoners, like actual terrorists. So kind of crazy. In any case, there are between 5,000 and 7,000 foreigners in Gaza. I say foreigners meaning non-Palestinians, people working there, people visiting, etc. 5,000 to 7,000. 361 were released today. They include US, French, Austrian, British, Australian, Saudi, Japan, Italian, and Jordanians. 491 were supposed to be released, but some of them just didn't make it on time, I guess, which is kind of crazy. The other ones, they said, because there's 5,000 to 7,000 of these people, these foreigners in Gaza that Hamas will not let leave, 491 got permission to leave. Thank you, adventurers. But some of the people, even though they got permission, their families didn't get permission, and they didn't want to basically leave without their families, which makes sense. So some of the folks just wouldn't leave anyway. Also today, around 45 injured Palestinians entered Egypt and also went for for hospital care in Egypt. They entered. I did a printout today. My printer was doing some funny streaks, but otherwise, it's a nice little printout of Gaza. This down here, so Israel, blue, Egypt here in yellow. So Egypt's got the southern border. This is the crossing in Egypt. The Israeli ones are closed. The Egyptian one is here. This is the Egyptian one where people came through today. And as I said, additionally, 45 Palestinians who are injured went through there, which was nice. Thank you, Happy Beach, because they're now able to get medical treatment in Egypt. There was another airstrike today on the Jabalia refugee camp. That is in the north. It's actually very north in Gaza. That's all the way up here. Okay, so Jabalia up here. Again, Israel's over here. Now, that is the camp where yesterday Israel has admitted this, which is interesting. Thank you, Shrek. I say interesting because, and again, I'm always trying to figure out like what's motivating countries and politicians and all of that. And we know up until now, Israel's been accused of, for example, they were accused of that hospital getting bombed, which at least most experts now think probably was a Palestinian terrorist group, Islamic Jihad, that did it by accident. What other missiles went out of control? But remember at the time, Israel was refusing to admit that they bombed the hospital. They didn't. I mean, they didn't. We believe now. And a lot of folks thought Israel was lying. What is interesting to me is this attack on a Palestinian refugee camp, this Jabalia camp in northern Gaza that happened yesterday. They believe, thank you, adventurers, they believe 50, the latest numbers are 50 civilians were killed. This is according to the Gaza, Indonesia hospital. So this is an independent hospital in Gaza. Their figures are 50 people were killed in the attack and another 150 were injured from Israel attacking this refugee camp yesterday. Thank you, Pam K. And the attack got a lot of international outrage because a lot of civilians, I mean, it's right there, 50 civilians were killed, 100 civilians were injured. Well, I shouldn't say that, actually. I shouldn't say that. I'm not going to say that. We don't know how many were civilians. Here's the reason. This is interesting, actually. Here's the reason I say this. Israel yesterday said that they killed 50 Hamas terrorists yesterday when they attacked the camp. If the Gaza hospital, thank you, Adam, is saying so far they've got 50 dead bodies, those dead bodies could be Hamas, they could be civilians. I'm not trying to downplay this, but what I'm saying is it didn't hit me till right now, putting the two facts together. We don't necessarily know how many civilians. What we do know is 50 dead, 150 injured, but we don't know which is which. Now, but what's interesting about this is Israel admitted yesterday that they did it. A second attack happened today on the refugee camp. Italy. Israel, again, immediately admitted they did it. That's interesting to me. Thank you, Happy Beach. I say that because, let me put it this way. Thank you, Cheryl. The fact that this attack, I would actually argue, this attack is I would say, I don't know whether the word is worst that I'm looking for. The attack that Israel actually did that has so upset the international community, okay? Of all of Israel's attacks in the last 3 weeks, this one, I think, has caused the most international outrage of attacks that Israel did. Because keep in mind, the most outrage was over that hospital that Israel didn't bomb, according to all the experts now, or according to 99% of the experts say Israel did not hit the hospital, right? It was Islamic Jihad. That caused the most outrage. Israel said no. This was the second most outrage. Actually, I would say equal outrage, this attack. Israel right away said, yeah, we did it. And today there was a second bombing. Israel right away said, yeah, we did it. My point here is, thank you, LWD. And I'm thinking of this as a journalist as well, because I do a lot of journalism. To me, that lends some credibility to Israel when they say yes and no, they didn't do something, because the fact that this attack is hated, people around the world are pissed about this attack. That did not stop the Israelis from admitting, yeah, we did it, right? I mean, they're defending it, but they're admitting up front that they did it. That's all I'm saying is that's interesting, because it gives you a little bit of a template that just because an attack killed a lot of people and people are outraged doesn't mean the Israelis are going to lie about it. In any case, the Israelis said they did it. Yesterday, they said that Hamas had a command center under the camp. There was a CNN reporter I was telling you guys yesterday that I was watching who said that the camp was known to be a Hamas holdout. Now, lots of innocent Palestinians living in the camp. That's not the issue. But that Hamas was known to basically keep a lot of their people in the camp. They used the camp as a human shield. Israel says Hamas had a command center underneath the camp where they were planning additional terrorist attacks, etc. There was a top Hamas commander who had been planning attacks for 20 years now against Israel. He was there with 50 or 49 or so. Oh, by the way, the homeless guy with his car is back, just so you know. So now we have every 15 minutes the car alarm going off. Anybody who experienced that with me a couple of months ago, it's been a real joy. But in any case, I don't know if you can hear but at some point you might hear the car going off. In any case, Israel says that they had a command center below. They did, interestingly enough, a little more details coming out today. The experts watching on CNN today said, judging by the hole in the ground, the Israelis did use a missile that was intended to blow things up underground. It clearly, thank you, Lizard Person. I fixed your thing on Discord, by the way. It should be correct. Double check it. But that that the missile, thank you, Lizard, the missile was clearly a missile that is used to get through the ground first and then blow up, because you used it for getting subterranean things. That's certainly interesting. What I would say is that tells us at least, thank you, Josh and Mary, that tells us at least that Israel most likely believed they were attacking Hamas underground. Doesn't mean Hamas was underground. But the fact that they used a missile whose purpose is to blow up underground, not above ground, certainly adds to the credibility of Israel's claim that they believed they were attacking a Hamas tunnel structure, okay? The Israelis named the guy they killed. They said 50 of his lieutenants were there. They argue that they had told the camp to be evacuated weeks ago. This is, mind you, about as north in Gaza as you can get. The camp is up here. Israel says they told everybody to evacuate in the top half of Gaza to go south. Obviously, a lot of people say, Gaza is 2.3 million people. Can you really expect 1 million people to evacuate, right? And they're not allowed to come into Israel or Egypt, so they'd all be basically evacuating from here into here, where you've got another, I'm saying 1 million. It depends how they're spread out. Fair enough. But, can all of these people fit down here? That's a fair complaint. That's certainly a fair complaint. In any case, so the Israelis attacked again today. They said there was more Hamas activity underneath the camp, and they attacked again. A UN Human Rights Office said, given the high number of civilian casualties and the scale of destruction following Israeli attacks on the Jabalia refugee camp, we have serious concerns that these are disproportionate attacks that could amount to war crimes. I will tell you this, and I've told you guys before, but we'd get different people each day. I approach this more from a military strategic foreign policy. Well, my perspective is foreign policy always. I'm not a military guy, but I am a foreign policy guy. And I always approach things from a perspective of what can governments do? What would government do? Not what would be the best thing. Because one of the things they taught us in graduate school, I went to graduate school at Georgetown. And one of the things they taught us was we had a lot of, what do you call them? I'm forgetting what we call them, simulations or whatever. Thank you, Russell. Where basically, like we had one where we recreated the Vietnam War. And I got to be the North Vietnamese leader. And basically, you kind of sit there and you figure out, okay, what's motivating these people? What do they care about? What do they want? What are they afraid of? What are they not afraid of? And you basically sort of internalize what makes this country tick, and then figure out what therefore would they do, what wouldn't they do, right? What are they, who can influence them, who can't influence them? And one of the things that I think is important, and I see this on CNN sometimes, which I give, like I told you, I like Jake Tapper on CNN because he's very good about this, is not, my point I'm raising right now isn't saying, is it bad or good for Israel to bomb this camp, right? But to say, I'm still not sure what the alternative is. Here's why. As I've said before, obviously, some of you could say, well, the alternative is not to kill civilians. Maybe. But you're in a democratic country, okay? Israel is a democracy. Whether you like it or not, it's not, it's not Syria, right? It's a democracy. The Israeli government, even if I don't like Netanyahu, but the Israeli government is responsible to their people. That attack was horrific that happened 4 weeks ago now, really almost. Horrific what they did. Israel has to respond. Here's the problem. You have a terror attack of that magnitude, okay? Israel's 10 million people. The US is 330 million people. If you compare it to the US, 1,400 people being murdered in Israel in one day would be equal to 40,000, actually 46,000 Americans being murdered in one day by terrorists who crossed the border. If 46,000 Americans crossed the border, we would wipe out whatever terrorist group did that if we could. The problem is, and this is where I say you've got to do role playing in a sense to figure this out. You are a government that's been attacked. You have lost a massive number of people, a massive number. Your existence is on the line. If you're Israeli or you're Jewish, it's the most number of deaths since the Holocaust. So you've got that historical memory as well, okay? So as a democracy, as a government, you have to respond. What do you do if the people who attack you hide among civilians? What do you do? And that's the problem here, is it's easy to say, do something else. What else would you do? They're hiding among civilians. I mean, what else? Do you just not do it? Right? You could not do it, but then you're going to get overthrown. I mean, because the civilians aren't going to, your own civilians aren't going to sit there. Okay, Zach says send special forces, but arguably that's what they're doing, right? I mean, that's what they're doing. They're sending the forces in. But in order to send special forces in, you've got to actually pacify the entire area because you're going block to block. So what do you do? But I know I throw this out there, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of some of the people on TikTok. It's always TikTok. But people need to give a specific answer as to what can Israel do. And if you can't give an answer that's an alternative, that is a politically acceptable alternative for a country to do, then I think you need to do some more soul searching on this, because it is still possible for you to say, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you, it is still possible. I mean, I'm very in between on this, and some people don't like I'm in between, but I am. It is still possible for you to say, it just seems immoral to attack that camp and kill the civilians. Okay. But somebody said blow up the tunnels. Okay. But the tunnels are under civilian camps. What do? You don't blow them up, or you blow them up and you kill civilians, or you just don't blow up anybody. And I would argue no country is going to blow up nobody. It's not going to happen. This is what Hamas wanted. I said from the beginning, I mean, a lot of experts have. This is what Hamas wanted. Hamas did this attack trying to get, this is what the Maoist guerrillas used to do in Peru. They would attack the Sendero Luminoso. This is like back in the 1980s, I think, or so. They would attack horrifically, hoping the government would crack down. Because from their perspective, if the government cracks down, it makes the people get more upset, and then the people will rally to their cause. Hamas wanted Israel to maybe not even overreact, to react. They wanted Israel to react horrifically, bombing, killing, because Hamas knew they're hiding among civilians. Civilians will get killed, and it will hurt the peace process. It will demonize Israel. It will radicalize the Middle East, which also, by the way, helps Hamas because it puts people like King Abdullah in Syria, King Abdullah in Jordan in more danger, because the more radicalized people get, the more danger he sort of is in. You know, it's very interesting, but it's a very, as I said, I think it's something as much, I'll move on to the next topic, but it's some, and again, I'm not going to argue with like the crazies on here, but the rest of you who really, even if you disagree, who I think are logical, good people, as I said, pretend you're in a class and you've been assigned the role of being the Israeli government and this happens. You've got to decide, thank you, John S., what the Israeli government does to respond to a massive slaughter of its own people. And I would submit to you, you're probably going to sit there and go, holy crap, I have no idea. You're not going to want to bomb the refugee camp. Thank you, 863. But I will bet you will not come up with a response that is politically acceptable for the Israeli people. I'll bet you, I guarantee you. And that, by the way, like I always say at the beginning of my shows, that is why this issue is such a pain in the ass. Because it's so freaking complicated. There's never a good solution. And anybody who tells you there's an easy solution or a good solution is lying to you, because there's never, ever, ever a good answer. There always seem to be bad answers. All right, let me keep going here. The Palestinian Red Crescent said its teams at the Rafah crossing, which is the crossing in southern Gaza into Egypt, thank you, Lizard, received 55 humanitarian aid trucks on Wednesday. The goal is to get 100 a day. That's still a lot fewer than they've had in the past, but they had 55. This may be the last one I got. Actually, there's not a lot of Israel news today. The last story I've got is actually more of a Russia-Israel news. You know how the other day we had that riot in Dagestan, right? This is the territory in Russia, I guess in Chechnya, and the people rioted. And actually the numbers I just saw today, 1,200 of these men rioted, a mob looking to lynch Jews at the airport. They went to the airport. They went to a local hotel. They heard there was a flight coming in from Israel, and they wanted to find the Jews. It was 1,200 men. I thought it was several hundred. I didn't know it was, according to the Moscow Times, it was 1,200 men. Horrific video of these guys. They're crazy. They're all yelling Allahu Akbar, like God is great, the religious chants, while rampaging the airport looking for Jews. And the way Russia responded is that basically they could have gotten up to 15 years in jail. Typically, Russia responds very poorly to riots and especially, mind you, they took over an airport, which is a government entity, okay? Typically, Russia frowns on such things. They didn't. Where was this? On Tuesday, it says, a court in Dagestan ordered the arrest of 7 detainees, 7 of them, for a period of 3 to 10 days. So 7 of the 1,200 got 3 to 10 days. That's it. Only 83 of the 1,200 overall were arrested at all. The Institute for the Study of War, which is a defense think tank here in Washington that's very good, they said that Russia is worried about the ramifications internally, that basically this could be showing some radicalization of the Russian people. The war, also Putin's own radicalization. Putin embraced Hamas. He had Hamas come to Moscow last week. That basically the Russians kind of finally figured out, hey, this isn't very safe to a dictatorship, having people riot. Because when people riot and take over airports, you've basically empowered them and you've shown them their power. And you've shown them that there are other people who think like them, because if 1,200 of them can riot to go against the airport this time, next time they can riot to go against you, right? So anyway, the head of Chechnya, Kadyrov, who's that idiot none of us really like, he apparently told the police, because this time they let them get away with it pretty much. He told the police that next time it happens, give 3 warnings, like 3 warnings or warning shots or whatever. And the third time, if they don't listen to you, shoot them dead. So now they're being a little more cautious about it. All right, I'm going to switch over to Ukraine, and then we will do questions and answers afterwards. Just to remind folks, please do support my work. I do this for free. I do it full time. And the way I support myself and I'm able to pay my bills is with your guys' gifts, with the memberships we do, with the auctions on the Discord. Our auctions are actually ending today. I'll get more stuff up tomorrow. But with the gifts here, they really help. They actually make a huge difference. The gifts on TikTok, just like Joe put up there, and Moss with the rose. The gifts on YouTube, super chat, super stickers. So thank you, Kronos. So if you guys can keep those coming, I really appreciate it. Oh, and do hit the like button. I always forget to mention the like button. Thank you, Marcy. Do hit the like button, the thumbs up on YouTube. Subscribe. And I should say both services do subscribe as well. Meaning not even the paid subscribing. Thank you, Lizard, just to do the following me on TikTok and the subscribe follow on YouTube. But you can also do the memberships too. We've got TikTok memberships, paid memberships once a month, YouTube paid memberships, all the folks in green like Laka and Ann and some of the others. Ko-fi and Discord. You can find all of those links via aravosis.com. Ko-fi's right there. For you guys, you can find those links in my profile on TikTok. Click the link and you will see lots of options for how you can support me, including PayPal. Thank you, Hazel. All right, let's get rolling here. Today is day 615 of Vladimir Putin's 3-day special military operation in Ukraine. Thank you, Mark and Lucy. And I think, and Catherine, thank you for that. What we got here. This was really interesting. There was an article that I found just before I came out with you guys, and I want to go through some of it with you. Basically, The Economist magazine, thank you, Scott, which is a very good foreign policy magazine out of London. I wrote for them for a while. Thank you. But they did an interview with General Zaluzhny, who is the top Ukrainian general. And they were talking to him about where the counteroffensive is, where it's going, what the problems were. And it was very interesting. Hang on, sip of water here. Very interesting. And I would say, honestly, a little depressing. I mean, which was interesting. Oh, thank you. I just saw the hat there. I just saw the crown there. And of course, evil TikTok isn't going to show me. TikTok is still broken. It didn't show me who did the crown. Thank you for the crown there. Thank you, Kronos. I hate when they do that. Thank you, Ellie, for the hearts. Sorry about that, whoever did the crown. It does that sometimes. It just doesn't show me who it was. I hate that. Jessica on YouTube may have done thank you, Louie. I don't know if that was meant to be a gift or a question, but if that was meant to be a gift. Oh, there you go. Jessica did have a question. Are we headed to World War III? Well, I mean, I don't think so, but I think it depends how you define World War III. This is a super chat question, and I always say I will answer the super chat questions because they're a gift. So the issue is, how do you define World War III? And I really mean that. Thank you, Chad. I don't mean that facetiously. Typically, World War III, we think, oh my God, America and Russia and China are going to war, and it's going to be huge, right? I certainly thank you, Katrine. And you fully Guinea. Oh my God. I can never pronounce yours, but thank you. Certainly, I think Ukraine had a better chance of involving the US versus Russia than the Middle East does. Thank you, Eva. I think in terms of the Middle East, not I think, Ukraine, it's Russia's border. Ukraine used to be part of the Soviet Union. The Russians feel like they own it. They feel like it's their backyard. So there is certainly more of a how do I put this? I don't want to say the Russians they don't have the right to Ukraine, but from their perspective, Ukraine is their sphere of influence, right? So they perceive Ukraine in some ways the way we perceive Israel. What I mean is, we're like this with Israel. We consider that I don't want to say sphere of influence, but I may not be explaining this well. With Ukraine, there was a greater chance of war with Russia. I don't think there was much of a chance, but there was a greater chance because Russia's fighting there, we're helping, it's a proxy war, etc. With the Middle East, America and Israel are like this. Russia and Iran are not like this. Russia and Iran are like this. They're not this, but they're this. But they're not best friends. Russia has not committed that it will go to war to defend Iran. U.S. and Israel? Oh, yeah. Going back decades, the U.S. will go to war to defend Israel. So the connection between the U.S. and Israel is much stronger than the connection between Russia and Iran. So the chance of the U.S. getting drawn into a war in the Middle East, I think there is a decent chance of that. The chance of the U.S. getting into a war in the Middle East with Russia? And with China, forget it. I just don't see a chance of China getting involved. China might get involved in some way, maybe in a peace deal or something else, but I don't see that. Now, the one thing I did hear today, which was interesting in a good way, was, the U.S. has been trying to make very clear to Iran that they shouldn't F around in the region. And China, and even though Iran has been using their proxies to go after us, Iran has still been showing some restraint. One of the things we appear to have done is we approached the Chinese, because the Chinese have better relations with Iran. And we told the Chinese, look, if we get a war going on with Iran, guess what's going to happen? They're going to stop the oil going through the Persian Gulf. And when they do that, your oil is getting cut off too. And that basically that's something that resonated with the Chinese. So the Chinese do not want war in the region. That's good, because they can use their weight for that. Russia is a supporter of Iran. In the end, Iran, let's say Iran and us get into a shooting war. I think there's a very small, Russia might give Iran some weapons, but Russia's not coming to Iran's defense to attack America. Whereas America will absolutely come to Israel's defense. That is true. So no, I do not see us heading to a world war. I do, however, think it is certainly possible that America could get dragged into this war. Hamas or Hezbollah, maybe even more likely, decides to attack American troops. What if we know the Iranian surrogates in Iran and in Iraq and Syria have been attacking U.S. troops? What if they get successful? I mean, they've hit some camps, but what if they kill 10, 20, 30 U.S. troops in an attack? That gets more serious. That gets a lot more serious in terms of the U.S. maybe hitting Iran itself, right? What if they attack U.S. ship and they're successful? They sink a U.S. ship, kill 200 troops, 200 Navy sailors, right? Now you're talking possibilities of the U.S. getting much more involved. That I think is possible, but I don't see it as like World War III. No. All right, let me keep going here. We were doing Ukraine at this point. So yes, I was going to read a little bit for you from this interview that The Economist did with General Zaluzhny, who's Ukraine's top general. It's not a very pleasant discussion. He says, just like in the First World War, we have reached the level of technology that puts us into a stalemate. He means Russia and Ukraine together, that basically they're at kind of, he even uses the word stalemate, which is kind of scary, for the battle between Russia and Ukraine because of the technology that both of them have, rather equal technology, he's saying. The general concludes that it would take a massive technological leap to break the deadlock. There will most likely be no deep and beautiful breakthrough. So he does not think, thank you, Kronos, he does not think Ukraine's going to have some huge breakthrough. At least he's saying that publicly. He thinks that the level of technology is very similar between Ukraine and Russia, and that unless one side, he talked about China getting gunpowder like way back when and how it changed the dynamics, that you would need some kind of a technological leap like that, which is interesting. He says, for example, that Ukraine incorrectly thought that Russia's massive casualties would bring it to the negotiating table, and that Russia losing 150,000 men at least, which they did, would influence them, and it hasn't, because Putin doesn't care about his soldiers dying. So Zaluzhny says that was one miscalculation the Ukrainians made. He said that they thought they would reach Crimea in 4 months. They really did think that they would be all the way in Crimea, fighting in Crimea by now. And obviously that was wrong. Interesting stuff from The Economist, though. The Economist writes, this is The Economist analysis themselves. Now, by the way, anybody who follows my show, actually, the last couple of days, I think I even said this during the show, listen to it. Thank you, Amy. Listen to The Economist's analysis, and you will hear my analysis. Western allies have been overly cautious in supplying Ukraine with their latest technology and more powerful weapons. Joe Biden, America's president, set objectives at the start of Russia's invasion. Thank you, Kronos and Timothy. Joe Biden set objectives at the start of Russia's invasion to ensure that Ukraine was not defeated and that America was not dragged into confrontation with Russia. This means that arms supplied by the West have been sufficient in sustaining Ukraine in the war, but not enough to allow it to win. Okay, I could have written this. I did not write this, but I could have written this. This is what I have been, I feel somewhat vindicated because this is what I've been saying for 9 months. And this is what people keep disagreeing with me and going, no. No, it's not true. Economist says a little bit more here. By holding back the supply of long-range missile systems and tanks, the West allowed Russia to regroup and build up its defenses in the aftermath of a sudden breakthrough in the Kharkiv region in the north last fall and in Kherson in the south late in 2022. So basically, the Ukrainians had a big breakthrough in last fall in Kharkiv, kind of like all of this. The Ukrainians pushed the Russians out in time. Remember, we're talking within a matter of like a couple weeks. They just pushed the Russian defenses collapsed. And here in Kherson, the Russians collapsed north of the river. Rather than the Ukrainians being able to take advantage of that and keep trying to get my ornaments going here without falling down, and keep the momentum going, the Ukrainians had to stop because they didn't have enough supplies. They didn't have the tanks from the West yet, right? They had to wait. They had to wait for NATO's additional weapons that we've been dragging our feet on to come, and it gave the Russians time. Oh, you did win. Good. Congrats, Shane. Shane just won the cool dark ornament. Congratulations. This one I like a lot because it's got the Cossack on it. I had these hand painted in Ukraine that we got. Very cool. I'm trying to be careful. I'm terrified that the ornaments are going to fall down and break. Hold on. I'm actually putting this on top of something on my desk so it doesn't fall down. There we go. Okay, Shane. Oh, that's good, Shane. I just got boxes to mail them too. So anyway, that's where things stand. I've got more news from Ukraine, but that disturbed me a little, having the top general use the word stalemate. It's unfortunate, but we may be heading that direction. Now, a little bit of a counter-analysis. A former British intelligence guy writing for Sky News, Philip Ingram, he today answered the question, basically, is Russia winning? And he said no. He started by analyzing and saying, look, the counteroffensive obviously going way slower than we wanted. We wanted the counteroffensive to go much more quickly. It's not. He said, but is Russia winning? Simply no. Ukraine maintains the military initiative and is dictating the time and place of operations. Ukraine continues to weaken Russia's ability to sustain its operations by attacking logistics, headquarters, air bases, and naval bases. Russia is increasingly reliant on North Korea and Iran for military material and is hoping China will start to supply some. The Ukrainian military has yet to get its Abrams tanks from the U.S. That was odd because we heard like a month ago that Ukraine finally got all of the Abrams tanks from the U.S. I don't know whether he screwed up or whether we heard that and they really still haven't gotten all the tanks. But that one, I don't know if anybody has heard anything about the Abrams. But remember how a month ago, well, I know, Joanne, we were told they got them. He's saying they haven't gotten all the Abrams. But anyway, he mentions the F-16 fighter jets aren't coming until next year. All of the Leopard tanks haven't arrived. And they've only just received the ATACMS. As Russia gets weaker militarily, Ukraine gets stronger, but this remains a David versus Goliath struggle, and the Russian Goliath maintains significant strength. Now, his good point, which I agree with, the real question is, can Ukraine continue to maintain significant or continue to manage significant casualties and with the war between Israel and Hamas, maintain wider international support? It is that war thousands of miles away that is Putin's best hope of bringing the Ukraine war to a stalemate and therefore, from his perspective, winning. That is the big concern. I mean, thank you, Jennifer. I will tell you, being in the U.S. right now, Ukraine isn't even on the radar for the American people right now. I mean, the only thing that's in the news is local stuff like Trump. I mean, because Trump's on trial for God knows which case right now, multiple cases, but I mean, his son testified today. So the news is Trump and the Middle East. That is the news right now. Israel. Ukraine pops up in the news. No one is thinking of Ukraine right now. That's dangerous. I mean, as far as, for where things go. I'm sure it's on yours, Martin, but you know what I mean. Generally speaking, for the American public and the media, Ukraine is not the story right now. Russia attacked an oil refinery in Ukraine overnight. Thank you, Velika. What's interesting about that is keep an eye on this because remember, Zelensky has said twice now that if the Russians attack Ukraine's energy infrastructure this winter, like they did last winter, the Ukrainians are going to retaliate. I got my cup. Reuters. So guess what? Turkey's being a jerk again. Thank you, Marcin. Turkey is playing games with Sweden and NATO again. Turkey's Foreign Affairs Committee said today they're in no rush Thank you, Soren. They're in no rush to move forward with Sweden's approval for NATO. Keep in mind, thank you, Scott, that when a country wants to join NATO, all 31 NATO countries must agree. Because the idea is each member country in principle, I mean, Trump literally said the other day that if Russia attacks NATO, he's not going to come to their defense. He literally said it. I mean, and of course, America being America and Trump being Trump didn't even cause a blip. No one even paid attention. Just like nothing, didn't matter. Really just amazing. So yeah, Trump just said, yeah, we're just not going to come and help NATO countries if Russia invades. I mean, obviously Biden will, but very dangerous stuff. In any case, you need all 31 NATO countries to agree when a new member joins, because each country is committing to defend that extra country, right? So obviously we can't just have a majority agree, because that would mean almost half the countries didn't agree that they're going to defend the new guy. So anyway, it has to be unanimous. The two holdouts are Turkey and Hungary. Turkey, Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, claimed several months ago, and I told you I didn't believe him. He said several months ago that, I am on board now with Sweden joining NATO, and we will submit it to the Turkish parliament in the fall when they're back from vacation. They came back a month ago from vacation. He also said, but I'm telling you, I don't think the Turkish parliament is sold on the idea yet. I love this. I mean, Erdogan's basically a dictator. I agree Sweden should be part of NATO, but that parliament, you're going to have to convince them. And I heard that and I went, you are such a jerk, right? Well, Erdogan, his committee now in the parliament says today that Sweden's NATO membership is just one of the international agreements on our agenda waiting for ratification. We will discuss it when the time comes within the framework of our own priorities. Thank you, Scott. What is urgent for others is not necessarily urgent for us. This is what you get when you coddle dictators or wannabe dictators in the case of Erdogan. NATO needs him, but he needs NATO. If Turkey doesn't have NATO, guess what's going to happen? Turkey leaves NATO, they saddle up to Russia, and instead of Turkey's allies being France, Britain, Germany, Italy, the United States, the Baltic states, right? Thank you, Connor. Turkey's new allies are going to be Russia, Libya, Syria, Venezuela, and North Korea, and Cuba. And that's going to be it. It's not going to be very good. It's not going to be great. They're going to get crappy weapons from the Russians. They're no longer going to get good American weapons, and they're going to have really lousy allies. I mean, Syria is going to come to defend Turkey. Libya? Really? Cuba? But I think at some point, somebody needs to sit down with Turkey and go, you know what? You're right. We need you, but you need us too. And if you keep screwing around with us, you're gone. By the way, the other thing Turkey really cares about, thank you, Timothy, for the live star. The other thing Turkey really cares about is Greece. And if Turkey wants America to be building up Greece more and more militarily, and Turkey gets nothing, okie dokie. Right? Thank you, Cindy. But Turkey doesn't want that. Not to mention, if Turkey leaves NATO, guess what happens because there's always been a little lingering threat of war between Greece and Turkey. If Turkey were to leave NATO, guess what happens if Turkey declares war on Greece? All of NATO goes to war against Turkey. Right now, if Turkey and Greece go to war, it's a mess for NATO because both are NATO countries. But if Turkey leaves NATO and war breaks out between Greece and Turkey, all of us go to war against Turkey. I don't think Turkey wants that. It's God. Anyway, so they're being jerks, guys, on the NATO stuff. South Korea's top spy agency believes North Korea sent more than 1 million artillery shells to Russia since August. Now, that's not as many as it sounds. That's enough for like 2 months, 2 or 3 months, 2 months worth, actually. But it still is something. I mean, 2 months is 2 months. The Wagner Group, they're recruiting again under the leadership of Prigozhin's son. But they're recruiting for the Russian National Guard. Thank you, Marcin. So it seems like it's the Wagner Group, but it's no longer the Wagner Group. It's now part of the Russian military that they're recruiting. 2 more things. In terms of funding, this was good, actually. Mitt Romney, who's a U.S. Senator, Republican, not running again, and somebody who seems like a very good man who doesn't have much of a backbone. He's the one who came out. He was one of the ones who came out and strongly opposed Donald Trump in 2016 and then immediately caved. Romney claimed yesterday that he will not let a bill go through Congress for aid to Israel if it does not include aid for Ukraine as well. That's good because he has the ability to stop it. The question is whether he really will stop it, but that's good. Biden threatened to veto a Republican bill for Israel if it does not include Ukraine. That's good too, meaning Biden kills the bill and Congress has to override it with like 2/3 majority or 3/5 majority. 3/5? I'm forgetting my veto override. I'm going to say 3/5 majority. It's 66, I think. That would be 2/3. It's 2/3, isn't it? What's the override for vetoes, guys? I think it's 2/3. Yeah. I was going to say, I remember 66 being the votes, which would be 2/3. Hey, the other thing I used to always have when I was a kid, I used to always have a problem when I was a kid with how many states we had, because there's 52 playing cards. And I would always have to sit there and think, okay, are there 50 American states or 52? And like, are there 50 playing cards or 52 playing cards? It used to always confuse me. So same thing with the 2/3 versus 3/5. The other actually good bit of news on aid for Ukraine is that the Speaker of the House, the new Republican, Speaker Johnson, who's the top Republican in the House of Representatives, he said today or yesterday that he recognizes now that he is Speaker, he represents more than just his own district in Louisiana, and that his position on Ukraine will have to change to represent more than just his district. Thank you, Kronos. Now, his position before was opposing aid to Ukraine. So that's interesting. It sounds like he's admitting that he's going to come to some kind of a compromise, which is not a bad thing. So, let's see. Of course, it's going to be a big negotiation, but we'll see. Honestly, I'm going to stop with that. So that's it. I'm not going to tell you about the auctions because our auctions are almost done. We've got one thing left. I'll put up new auction items tomorrow for next week, but we've got a nice Discord community over at discord.aravosis.com, and we auction off. Thank you, Ketamine. We auction off cool stuff from Ukraine that I use to basically support my work, but 50% of it also goes back to Ukraine, which is nice too. So, but like I said, the auctions end today, so there really isn't anything there right now. All right, guys, let's do Q&A and comments and Israel, Ukraine. Yemen's weird. I don't know about what's going on with Yemen, with the Houthis and all that kind of stuff. They seem to want to just be troublemakers. I don't know what their ability is to cause real problems or not, or whether they're just kind of being idiots. Thank you, Lizard. I just don't know. Thank you, Jeremy. What else we got, guys? Again, either Israel or Ukraine. Biden and Xi. That's a good question. Putin is going to be meeting with going to China again shortly. Not clear what's going on with that. I don't know. I don't know what's going. I just don't know. It's problematic because typically you don't have leaders visit, and they've been visiting each other back and forth. Typically, you don't have leaders visiting each other without a reason. Like, okay, you can do an official visit because you haven't done one in a while. Thank you, Liel. Right. If Biden has never met with the Chinese premier or something, you might say, okay, right, we ought to have an official visit. But even then, usually don't do it just to do it. Usually there's a reason. You're trying to work out a treaty, something like that. The fact that the Russians and the Chinese keep meeting at the presidential letter, the premier, the top level, is somewhat concerning to me because it makes me worry what they're doing, what they're working on. It worries me a bit. So I don't know what they're doing, but it worries me. Yeah. I've heard about a number of them. I will tell you that. Amir is asking about a story that Hamas cooked a baby in an oven. I saw that story. I will tell you some of the stories I'm not repeating because I don't want to repeat things until I've got enough of a sense that there's stuff backing them up. Right. I heard that one, but I'd like to get more on it, right? We do know, I saw CNN today was able to review more of the video, more of the Hamas video. It's not, honestly, I think Israel ought to publish this stuff, to be honest. They really do. Because they've been showing it to journalists and things around the world. They need to freaking publish the video and let people see it. But there was video today that Jake Tapper on CNN saw, and they showed pictures, but they obscured the scary stuff that showed, for example, an adult and a child were wired together. Their bodies, they used wire to basically hold them to each other, and then they set them on fire. So, I mean, sorry, Deb, if you're there, there's that kind of stuff. There seems to be proof. There is proof. They've got the remains. I mean, that's for real. There was something else. Oh God, what was the other thing? Oh, the other thing. Well, the other thing was yet another baby that was burned and beheaded, and they've got the body. They showed the body on CNN, a little obscured, but you could tell. The question was, as they said on CNN, was the baby beheaded before or after it was killed? We don't know. We saw a beheaded baby. Some of those things we know. As I said, some of the stories we hear, I don't necessarily want to repeat unless we've got a little bit more background to prove it, because I don't want to be just repeating stuff. But why does it matter? Well, here's why it matters. Because if you cut off the baby's heads of the person you're invading, they're going to destroy you, and they're going to bomb your refugee camps, and they're not going to care if there's civilians there, because you literally are baby killers. And if you're baby killers, you're gone. So it matters in terms of what Israel is going to do in response. And it also matters in terms of the justification for what Israel is going to do, and whether some people are going to say, you know what, it's horrific what Israel did, but also it's justified. That's what happens when you kill babies. And I'm talking not just babies killed by accident, but you literally chop off their head. That's what matters. And the very fact that you would say, why does it matter that they beheaded a baby, sadly kind of proves the Israelis' point, that people don't care. And unfortunately, like I said, I think Israel's, let's see. The internet, the thing too, again, I think back to my Georgetown years. If I'm Israel, the world hates me. The world's always hated me. The world hates Jews. Big surprise. I'm serious. I think from Israel's perspective, I don't think the critics are achieving what they want to achieve with this. I really don't. I think it's fine to be upset about what Israel's doing, but there is clearly a coordination to it, and there's clearly some animus, some dislike of Israel and dislike of Jews for a lot of people. Obviously not everybody. Obviously, because I know a lot of you. But the fact that the world turned on Israel literally after the first day, sorry, my allergies are kicking in again. The first day, the world felt bad for Israel because literally they slaughtered babies. The second day, the world got upset because Israel bombed Gaza, and the world didn't stop since then. If I were Israel, I would, and I'm sorry, but again, this is what worries me about this conflict. This is what worries me, is if I were Israel, I'd be saying, yeah, you're all upset we bombed a camp, and you were all upset that we bombed a hospital that we didn't bomb, that actually you bombed yourself. And you got pissed at us for that too. And you're attacking Jews at Cornell University, and you're attacking Jews in Russia, and you're attacking Jews in Paris and putting Stars of David up. You simply hate Jews, and you always hate Jews. And if you're Israeli and Jewish, this is not new. Israel always gets the hate from the United Nations. Hates us. What a surprise. The Arab street is rioting. What a surprise. If you're Israel, I fear if you're Israel, the world's reaction is telling Israel, you're on your own. The world hates you. Guess what? You were right. The world still hates Jews, and you have very few friends. And if you don't defend yourself, no one's going to defend you. And that worries me, because I feel that it puts Israel in a position. This is why, this is why I take the positions I take on things, guys. I think to some degree, the world has put Israel in a position where Israel has to do what it does because it knows it's alone, and it knows far too many people out there want it dead, and they want Jews dead. And I just, it's so then they've got to sit there and say, well, we're going to bomb Hamas. Hamas is hiding in a camp, right? They're hiding in a refugee camp. We're going to kill civilians, but they're literally trying to wipe us off the planet. What do we do? It's bad, lots of bad options, I mean, well, no, and but a lot of folks don't. I mean, Jimmy's saying I've never hated a Jew or an Arab. I agree. The thing is, you guys, I know, right? I mean, the regulars here, I know you guys are normal, right? But on this issue, I'm sorry, we've seen far too much anti-Semitism. I'm sorry. I've seen far too much. There has been some Islamophobia. That thing in Chicago was the worst. Obviously, that guy killed a 6-year-old boy, right? The good news is we're not seeing repeats of that, which is good, right? I mean, thank God. We are not seeing the concern after September 11th, right? We're not seeing that. We're not seeing we're not at least seeing or hearing much about harassment of Arabs, which is good in America. But we are absolutely hearing horrific attacks on Jews worldwide. And that is not helping matters. So anyway, what else we got, Randy? That was a happy note. Springtrap, I'm sorry. Do you think the teams for World War III are forming? Well, I mean, I think again, I don't think we're going to have World War III, but the teams are already there. The teams have always been there. Egypt and Jordan are more sane. They're kind of on America's team, but they're obviously not on Israel's team. Saudi Arabia, more sane. I mean, axe murderer, but more sane. Kind of on America's team. Saudi Arabia, by the way, I read something today that was crazy. I'd have to read. I just saw it quickly, that the Saudis said that basically they're not opposed to continuing normalization with Israel, something like that. And I was like, whoa, that's a bit surprising. But I have to read the article first. I thought that was a bit surprising. Tarek asked, do you consider criticism of the Israeli government anti-Semitic? No, because I think Netanyahu's an idiot. I think Netanyahu's a warmonger. And that's a phrase, because some foreigners had asked me before what it means. Warmonger means somebody who just wants war. They don't want peace. They want war. I think he's horrible. I think he's absolutely horrible. The problem is, I think, and I feel like I've seen this in the last, and again, I'm not Jewish, so I don't have a personal stake in that. I have seen a lot of hatred of Jews coming out of people. That worries me. I think there is a lot of just visceral hatred of Israel in a lot of people's attitudes about this. But that does not mean, because the last 20 years, I think a lot of Israel's governments have been horrible. I mean, you probably know the issue better than I do, some of you guys out there. But I think of Ariel Sharon and Netanyahu especially, horrible people. The settlers in the West Bank, horrible people. I mean, and some crazy extremist settler guy, he got like a cabinet position or something crazy today? What happened in Israel? Something happened today with some crazy settler type guy who's a nut job that got something elevated today in Israel. I mean, that stuff doesn't help, well, I mean, you wonder why we hate them? Here's the problem. If you were to say that about Arabs, I don't think people would be very happy with you if you said, do you wonder why we hate Arabs? That would be a really bigoted thing to say. It really would. That's what I'm saying. There is, in the law, we use the term animus, which means sort of anger, hatred that is underlying. And that, I think, is what is unhealthy. I think there is and again, I will guarantee you there is also a prejudice about Arabs involved with this too, right? The Palestinians, right? I mean, I kind of don't want to repeat this stuff because then it's going to sound like, I don't want to repeat it, but let me put it this way. Looking at the Palestinians as being, well, they're Arabs, they're in the Middle East, they're poor, their lives aren't as important, right? Everyone's poor in the Middle East, so big deal. You know what I mean? So there's, I'm trying to say this in a nice way, but you know what I mean? Like, so that their lives don't matter as much anyway. So that if they get bombed, who doesn't get bombed in the Middle East, right? So that there's this kind of prejudice involved as well. And you've got to make sure not to treat it that way too. You know, I mean, obviously, but that's clearly an issue too for a lot of people. Honestly, and again, I just, yeah, like I said, I can't stand Netanyahu, so I don't want to keep harping on it, but I really don't. But you know, anyway, but yeah, but all I was going to say, sorry, Springtrap. So the teams for World War III, I think the teams are already there. You know, we always had America and Israel as one team. You know, government of Lebanon, pretty good. Hezbollah, horrific in Lebanon. Hamas, horrific. They're part of Team Iran. A lot of, thank you, Cinderella and Becca. A lot of the Iranian allies in Syria and Iraq, Team Iran. The other Arab countries, kind of in the middle, but not in the middle because they can't side with Israel, you know. So they end up being a little more radicalized. But anyway, the teams are already there. It just depends whether we all get dragged into a bigger fight. I don't know. I just don't know. You know. What else? We could get a terrorist attack in the U.S. I'm sure they're going to try, but, you know, that's nothing new to some degree, you know? I mean, that's nothing new. Thank you, Ogden. I don't know if you had a question there, Ogden, in the super chat. If you did, feel free just to post the question as a question. Have to take the puppy out. That's okay. Puppy break would not be a terrible idea. FBI's terrorist warning. I mean, look, we know that there's going to be increased threats of terrorism as a result of all of this. Thank you, Super Hornet. We know that. I mean, I just, you know, all you have to do is, I mean, what do you do? Our law enforcement just has to handle it. But I'm sort of like, I don't know, what am I going to do? You know, I don't like it, but it doesn't change my life. You know what I mean? What do you do? I don't know, Major. I mean, or Mayor. Mayor says, do you think the next government in Israel will be more to the left or the right? I do not know Israeli politics enough to know that. I will say that this attack in most countries, this attack makes things a little confusing, the Hamas attack, politically, because when you have a slaughter like this, what Hamas did in Israel, that often can push you into a right-wing government. Because, and actually, we had on my podcast, I should get him on the show here at some point. We had on my podcast, Jared Yates Sexton, very interesting, kind of a liberal thinker, writer, very interesting guy. And I think it was Jared. No, it wasn't Jared. Jared was, I think, one of them. And we also had, I think it's Ian Garner. I'm forgetting his name a U.S. guy, American guy teaching in Britain too. It was one of them talking about how studies show that when crises hit, people tend to prefer right-wing leaders because it's the right wing that is more of this, a little bit more war and strength and violence. You know, we're going to protect you. And there's this sense of, you know, maybe they'll overreact, but I know they'll protect me. Whereas the left, is the left going to protect me, or is the left going to want to hug a tree and have peace? And right. So I mean, it's a stereotype, but it's true that you run the danger of something like the Hamas attack causing Israelis or any country to move to the right because, hey, we need leaders who are into who fight wars, and those are the right wing, right? The other danger, though, for Netanyahu is that Israelis look and go, you know what? You're the idiot who was running this country, who didn't even know that Hamas was planning this for 2 years right across the border. How the hell did you not know, looking at all the satellites, that they were doing this? Right? How the hell did you let them even cross the border? How the hell did you let them rampage all these areas so that they attacked kibbutzes? I mean, some of these people in the kibbutzes, one at the beginning of the war, one guy was there for like 9 hours with his family. I think like wounded or whatever. 9 hours. I mean, how the hell did they not get help for 9 hours? Remember the one guy whose father was like a former general or something, and the father finally had to come and get him because the government wasn't coming. That is a massive failure of the Israeli government. So that's a danger for Netanyahu, because that could push you to a more left-wing government if people say, you know what, the right wing always told us they were the war people and they suck at war. Maybe we need to go to the left wing. That's a possibility. Or they say, let's do right wing, but let's get somebody else instead of Netanyahu, right? So I just think like it's hard. This attack could push Israelis to the right, or it could push Israelis to say, this guy's an idiot. Actually, the latest poll does show something like 70% of Israelis want Netanyahu out after the war, but I didn't see how they feel right now, because the war could take 10 years. So after the war doesn't really say anything, But clearly people are pissed at him, which maybe they'll also be pissed at his political party if they identify him as the party. That's the question. But it could. I mean, Ina is saying it could push Israel to the right. It can. That's the thing. These kind of attacks, and I say to the right, but I mean, you look at America after 9/11. We didn't have an election, but the country was looking for war after 9/11. That's just a natural response. Oh God, I don't know. Spring is asking, what are the 5 best places and things to see or do in DC? Oh God, I don't even know. I mean, I'm trying to think. That's tough. I mean, here's the thing. DC is, sorry, I always say when I have a super chat question, because people pay for it, I will always answer them. So even though this isn't related to the topic, you paid, so I will answer. Washington is nice because most of our museums are free. We have our federal museums, the Smithsonian, are all free. So there's like 25 museums. They're free. The zoo is part of the Smithsonian. The zoo is free. We have a great zoo. There's a ton of museums. Thank you, Macabre. The Air and Space Museum, which is all the space launches, is very cool. I like the Natural History Museum, which is like animals and dinosaurs and stuff. That's really cool for kids, especially, obviously. Thank you, Daniel. There's lots of different, so those are great. Beyond that, I actually went to the Bible Museum. It was really interesting. I'm not into, because the Bible Museum people are a little crazy for my tastes. It's the Hobby Lobby people or whatever. Thank you, Joe. But the stuff they've got is totally, I've never been to the Middle East. It reminded me of going to a museum in the Middle East. They've got the coolest stuff from the Middle East. It's all of the biblical era. They've got original stuff. They've got beautiful video displays that are almost interactive. It's pretty cool. I mean, of all people, but I'm saying the Bible Museum was really interesting if you're into the history and stuff. And if you're religious, all the better. People love the Spy Museum. I've never been. White House, if you could get a White House tour, good luck. Thank you, Kronos. But very, very difficult. You have to know somebody inside. Very difficult. But those are very cool. I'm not sure beyond that. I mean, and I shouldn't say that. I love the Washington not the Washington Monument. The Lincoln Memorial, I think, is wonderful. I love the Lincoln Memorial, especially at night. The Jefferson Memorial at night is lovely. I would try, the final point, and we'll continue, I would try to do a tour of the memorials at night because they're beautiful. Yes, the Cherry Blossom Festival in springtime is wonderful. Hobby Lobby did get caught illegally importing antiquities, yes. And also, they found out a number of their things were fake, which was interesting too. But if you can do a tour at night, I would even consider, thank you, Kronos, renting out an Uber or something for an hour or two and just do a tour at night of the various monuments. You know, the Vietnam Memorial, the Korean Memorial, the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson at night, they're stunning. I mean, they really are. Standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, assuming you don't get murdered, but standing on the, it's Washington after all, but standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial at night, it's at day, it's beautiful, but at night, it's stunning. So that would probably be my number one suggestion. I mean, very interesting question. That was funny to ask. So thank you for that. Danielle, thank you as always. Hobby Lobby is a big company in America. Thank you, Daniel. Hobby Lobby is a big company in America. That is very religious conservative. Thank you, Alex. Like super duper. And they've spent tons of money on setting up this Bible museum that they ended up buying illegal stuff. And some of it was fake as well. And they got into trouble, but it still is a very coolest museum. Washington is very dangerous at night, sadly. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Is Putin still with us? I mean, you know, we assume Putin's still alive. We assume Putin's still alive. I think he is. I think he is. It's very scary, though. Thank you, Jonathan. It's a little scary. DC's politics, not politics, the politics, but the crime has been pretty bad here. Thermodynamics exam, yikes. God, I hated physics. Physics and, well, depending which that is, physics and chemistry, both I hated. College actually killed my love of science. I love science anyway, but I was a science major and absolutely hated it in college. They just killed everything, which really bummed me out. I should have gone, done something anyway. What do you do? What do you do? Thank you for the hands there, Kronos. What else we got, guys? What else we got? Physics. I think physics is, now I think physics is cool. I actually did in high school, there was a special program that we could go to Fermi Lab on the weekends. And they had a special program. It was a gifted student program, but I didn't know that's what it was at the time. But we'd go to Fermi Lab every Saturday. And it was Leon Letterman was the guy that was in charge that would do like these lectures, and we got to meet him. And we'd like talk to him, and he ended up getting the Nobel Prize, I think. Like, he was a big deal in physics. And it was and we'd play on the computers. As a high school kid, oh my God, it was the coolest thing. So I do love science, even though I don't, do science anymore. I still love science. I find it very cool. Very cool. Anyway, what else we got, guys? What else we got? I don't think China's going to get involved in the Middle East. I don't think so. I think China might try to get in. The thing is, China has been trying to get involved in the sense that they're trying to have more influence in the Middle East. We know that, right? But China doesn't have the relationships that are, America, if you bomb Iran, China's going to bomb you. China doesn't have those kind of relationships. I could see China trying to be like a peacemaker or something, because that way they get their nose under the tent. They get their nose into the Middle East a little bit more. So I could see them having a role. Thank you, NJ Patman. But I don't necessarily see China coming in and being a combatant or anything. I don't think so. Thank you, Daniel. Ogden's asking, some people argue, I'm not sure what you mean, Ogden. You wrote that too quickly. Israel let it happen so they can wipe? I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, YouTube censoring the questions? Oh, you know what? We had to I previously had to censor some words because people were spamming, and I don't know if you may be using some words people were spamming with. Why don't you try writing a word where almost is the whole word, but putting an asterisk for some of the letters or something? Because what it means is, in the last year and a half, we had people bringing up other topics and spamming. So we had to, like I said, Israel may even be a word we ban. I don't even know. Whoever was spamming, we would throw the word in to make them go away. So that's what's happening. Feel free to write, and again, you don't have to pay for it, but feel free to write it again. Thank you, D-Man. Annie, when am I going to write a book? I know, it'd be kind of funny. I don't feel like my life is interesting enough to write a book, to be honest. Oh, it won't. I have Israel banned. That's funny. That's funny. We had during the, because I've been covering Ukraine for a year and a half. We must have had, that's funny. We must have had trolls coming in on YouTube, because I broadcast on YouTube at the same time, and attacking Israel when, of course, my broadcast is about Ukraine, and attacking Israel. So we finally had to ban the word Israel on YouTube on my lives, because people were just going nuts about Israel. And of course, it had nothing to do with Ukraine. So that's funny. That is funny. Sorry. But feel free just to put your question up without that. We'll know when you say ISR, I'll know you mean Israel, but your question didn't make sense though anyway. Some people argue that Israel let it, I see. Some people argue that Israel let it happen so they can wipe out Hamas. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, the thing is, okay, there is a school of thought in Israel. I don't think everyone agrees with this. I have seen some opinion pieces in Haaretz, however you guys pronounce it, which I enjoy Haaretz. I don't know if it's more liberal, but the publication. But I've seen some pieces there that that suggest that basically Netanyahu kind of built up Hamas. He wanted Hamas to be strong because he didn't want the Palestinian Authority to be strong. The Palestinian Authority is like the other political power. They're of the Palestinians. They're very weak, and they're they're relatively moderate. They're not a terrorist group, right? And the theory is it was better for Netanyahu to basically have the terrorist group running the Palestinians, because then you could say, well, we can't negotiate with these people. We can't have we can't create a Palestinian state. They're terrorists. Now, the only thing is, if that's your position, why would you then let Hamas attack Israel so you can wipe them out? Because up until now, that theory is that Netanyahu didn't want to wipe Hamas out. This is just one theory. He didn't want to he wanted Hamas, because Hamas being in charge meant Israel could always say, well, the Palestinians are run by crazy people. We cannot let them have a state, right? So why would he let them invade? I mean, if anything, you get what I'm saying? I'm not always a fan of conspiracy theory. What I mean by conspiracy, meaning that takes a little, it's a little 11th dimensional chess, a little bit. You know what I mean? And I would also hope, I don't like Netanyahu, but I would hope he's not so bad that he would just let his own people be slaughtered. I don't know. Again, I don't know what do the Israelis here think. Does anybody reasonable in Israel think that Netanyahu might have known and let it happen anyway? Is that even vaguely a theory people think, or is that akin to people in America who think George Bush? I was just going to say, Noah just said it, like saying 9/11 was an inside job, which we consider that to be insane, absolutely insane. A lot of the folks rang in saying no. Well, I ain't sorry saying no, but he's responsible. Yeah. So basically saying, no, I don't think he did it on purpose, but clearly he screwed up. And yeah. See, most of the folks are saying no. He's corrupt, but no. Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. No, that's what I was going to say. So I think I'll put it this way. I think people think he's still a patriot, so to speak. Right? He wants to defend his country, but he wants to do it in a very bad way. So that's yeah, exactly. He didn't do it on purpose, but he messed up big time. And hang on a second, Cinderella, I'm trying to see where you had a comment here. Cinderella, where's your comment? You said comment in the chat, but I'm not sure where you mean that. Is that somewhere, somebody, maybe somebody, if you know what Cinderella's talking about? Read my comment on the chat. What chat where? Here? Yeah, post your question. I'm not seeing it. Post it again. Let me see here. Oh, that's interesting. On October 7th, many Israeli Defense forces had to go guard settlers in the West Bank. Okay, but I don't know that it was on. Cinderella, write your comment again, and the mods will make sure that I see it. Anyway, but I think it's interesting to bring it up. But that was my suspicion, is that people would treat the Netanyahu theory kind of the way we treat, or exactly like we treat the idea that George Bush knew about 9/11, which I'm not a fan of George Bush, but I don't believe I do have my mic still here. I don't believe he knew about 9/11. So. Why did we let Turkey join NATO? The thing is, Turkey is very important. Turkey, let me pull up I'm just going to show you my little map on the phone here really quick. Turkey, okay, Muslim country, which is very interesting, right? Because all of a sudden we've got a country that we can use perhaps to help with relations in the Middle East, right? And all right. All right, here we go, real quick. So you see Turkey, right there at the top, right? Look what's next to Turkey. Syria, Iraq, Lebanon. I'm going to zoom in here, okay? Right south of Turkey. So you got Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. Turkey's on the water there. So Turkey also is right on the water off of Lebanon and Israel, right across from Egypt. They're right in the middle of everything. So Turkey is in a very, and they've got a big military and a strong military. They're in a really strategic position. They're in a really strategic position. Also, I wonder to what degree, I don't know enough about this, whether NATO was interested in having Turkey as a part of a way of modernizing Turkey, of cementing Turkey's democracy. My uncle was a famous Greek politician. And I mean, he was the defense minister, the foreign minister, the deputy prime minister, and the United Nations ambassador in the 1980s under Papandreou. And I had asked him, he died several years ago, but about 10 years ago, I was in Greece and we were talking, and I asked him about Turkey joining the European Union. And that's been on hold forever because of Cyprus. And I mean, now I can say it because my uncle died, but he said, Turkey has to join the European Union. I said, what do you, I said, oh, I'm surprised to hear that from you. He said, no, he said, in order to basically, I mean, I think I recorded it, actually, I've got to find it, but in order to sort of cement democracy in Turkey, to make sure Turkey doesn't go backwards, to make sure it doesn't turn into a radical Islamic country, or at least an an undemocratic country, which it's becoming a little bit under Erdogan, they need to be part of the EU to keep them, to basically modernize. And I'm sorry, and the point here was, because by becoming a real democracy, Turkey would no longer be a threat to Greece, which I thought was fascinating. Now I'm forgetting what you guys, somebody raised something that made me think of that. About why Turkey joined NATO. I don't know whether NATO, that calculus went in there as well with NATO, that by joining NATO, you keep them secular. There you go. Thank you, Kenny. You're saying it better than I did. You're keeping Turkey secular. You're keeping it as a sort of a democratic, a not religious democracy versus a religious government, But anyway, so I wonder with NATO whether that was part of the thinking as well. In addition to, they're strategically very interesting located, and they're Muslim. So it's very interesting as far as a potential ally, if they were a good ally. Access to the Black Sea. Okay, Kelly says as well. Good point. Well, Turkey controls the Bosporus. Good point too, which is where's my thing here? Which is the lane, the sea lane, so to speak, from the Mediterranean to... So basically the Bosporus, it's hard to tell on the map because the Black Sea is here. Okay, Ukraine's here, Turkey's here. So this is the sea. This is the Mediterranean off of Greece. To get from here to here, you have to go through a little bit of land right here. That's the Bosporus. It's Turkey. It's like a little isthmus of connection through Turkey in order to get here. Well, in order for Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, Russia, Georgia even, to get access to the Mediterranean, they've got to go through Turkey. So Turkey, strategically, it's an important country strategically, but the Turks know it and they play games, which is unfortunate. So, Oh, YouTube chat. I don't know what that means, Cinderella. I don't know. I have some software I use and it should be showing up here. I don't know what that means. Thank you, Tom. I have no idea what that means. Why don't you just write the comment here? You don't have to pay for it. Just write the comment here. I don't know where you mean by YouTube chat, because I'm looking at the chats on YouTube right here. I don't know what that is, but you need to send me unless it's something you want me to look at later, I can try, but I don't know what YouTube chat means. I just don't know what YouTube chat is, to be honest. Oh, the question's being filtered, you think? Maybe. I can look, and the problem is I could do it. Well, I'll look at it afterwards. Actually, mods, remind me later, maybe the word Israel is getting filtered on YouTube. I can go and look at the filters just to make sure, because we did have all those trolls a long time ago. Anything else, guys? It's 7:30. I don't want to go too long. Thank you, Kronos. Always another Halloween gift is fun. Would Turkey help more if they got less oil from Russia? Oh, I don't know. I think they're kind of close to Russia anyway. That's like their cute little game they play. Do I post the TikTok live in your account afterwards? Not usually. TikTok, you can't, because TikTok, I'd have to go through it and pull segments, which are very difficult. And by the way, whenever I do it, nobody watches them anyway. I've done it before on TikTok where I've gone through and taken the time to get segments. Nobody watches them. Thank you, Livestar. So, what we do have, thank you, Timothy, is this tapes automatically on YouTube at the same time. So you can always go to YouTube to watch the entire show. And on YouTube, I'm John Aravosis DC. Aravosis, you see my last name at the top there. So John, John, Aravosis DC, as in Washington, DC. One word, John Aravosis DC is my YouTube. You can Google it, and the show is always recorded there simultaneously, so you can always watch it there. So check that out. You can, and I put it on Facebook and stuff too. But YouTube is very easy just to go check it out. I think YouTube's probably the easiest to find, because Facebook, I think finding stuff is a little crazy. Is Russia losing the war? I mean, Russia and Ukraine, the thing is, I've said this before, I don't think Russia's winning the war. I feel like, I mean, the Ukrainian general today called it a stalemate. I hear you, Sash, you gotta wait. You just gotta wait. My dog. The Ukrainian general today called it a stalemate, which I thought was interesting and concerning. I think what is happening is hang on, I'm like killing my things here. The Ukrainians are winning slowly. They're winning slowly. So it's like a time, not even time, it's like a slow motion machine that they're slowly taking land, but it's going to take 10 years if they continue at this pace. And will they have the men for 10 years? Or will they, do they have enough people? Will they have enough weapons, enough ammunition for 10 years? That's my concern. Is Ukraine, I think, is still doing better than Russia, but Ukraine isn't doing well enough so that it's taking too long. And by the way, the longer it goes, Russia digs in more and more and more, which makes it even harder for Ukraine to take it back. I think we screwed up. I really think we screwed up. Biden didn't want Ukraine to win, and Biden got his wish. He wanted Ukraine not to lose. All right, see you, Callum. Go to bed. It just really pisses me off. But what do you do? All right, Gunther, the problem is we go late on these things. Oh, from Springtrap? Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, Springtrap had a super chat. Okay, did not see that. Thank you. Will China attack Taiwan since the U.S. is stretched thin? That's an interesting question. That's a concern I would have. I would be concerned about that. If I were China, this is a very interesting time to attack Taiwan potentially. The U.S. is still involved with Ukraine. The U.S. has been putting a lot of weapons into Ukraine. The U.S. now is having to worry about potentially getting dragged into a war in the Middle East. Can we afford a war in China with China and Taiwan as well? Now, part of the question becomes, is China prepared for a war with the U.S. over Taiwan? China itself may need several years to prepare for that war. So it might be too early, even though I think it is a good opportunity for China potentially to attack now. I mean, you could argue it's a better opportunity than it was before the Israeli conflict, Gaza conflict started. It still doesn't mean that China's ready to attack Taiwan. Maybe they themselves were planning for 3 years, this kind of stuff, So, but it is certainly better for Taiwan to attack China today than it was 2 months ago. Yes. Because the U.S. now has one more distraction and one more place where we've got to keep our troops and keep some weapons and keep some of our Navy. So, that's possible. Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy. Anyway. All right, guys. Oh God. Some of you guys are asking like exam questions. Some of you scare me with the questions. I don't even want to I don't even want to try some of these questions. But you're like my friend Marion. Marion's great at asking exam questions, like really hard, which are good, but kind of hard questions. All right, guys. How long do I think this war could go on for 10 years? I mean, the problem is for Israel is this could be, if Israel really wants to clean Hamas out of Gaza, it could take them a 5 or 10 year occupation to do it. I mean, Israel found out they invaded Lebanon at one point and occupied sort of southern Lebanon. It was very difficult. And that's the concern a lot of folks have about this. And the U.S. had it as well. The U.S. kept telling Israel, don't invade and just invade, it's going to be a problem. The problem becomes what Ina is saying is they don't have a choice. That's the problem. Do they this is and that actually good? This is a good place to end. As I always say, it's not enough to say, "Is that a good idea? That's crazy what Israel's doing," right? Or that's a war crime, or they're nuts. They're going to be there 10 years if they invade Gaza, right? You've got to look at what are the alternatives. What is Israel's best option for responding to the terrorist attack? And if that's the case, it may mean some of the stuff that's less savory, such as occupying Gaza, maybe you have to. Maybe you don't have a choice but to go into Gaza for 5 years. Maybe not. It's going to be horrible. You're going to lose a lot of people. But if you're Israel and you perceive this as an existential threat to your country, then you say, well, the choice is between letting them wipe us out or we take a lot of casualties. Then again, think Ukraine. The choice is you let the Russians wipe you out or you take a lot of Ukrainian casualties fighting the Russians. You take a lot of Ukrainian casualties fighting the Russians. It's better than dying. They're better than losing your country. So that's and as I say, that's sort of the problem for Israel right now. Is not the problem, but it's also the world. As I said, it's something that I think everyone needs to sort of think of. Is, as I said, it's not enough to criticize Israel. You have to think, what could Israel do otherwise? And you have to be realistic. You can't be stupid about it. Well, Israel should just give up, right? Or Israel should just pull out entirely and let the Palestinians do what they want. Well, Gaza's literally run by terrorists, so that's not going to work, right? It's got to be something reasonable that Israel that a government can do. It's not an easy answer on any of this stuff, I don't think. And honestly, the Arabs are in a similar boat. The Palestinians are in a similar boat to some degree. You've got the radical elements. Can the more liberal elements survive with people like Hamas running around? Do they even care? Do the Arab governments even want a Palestinian state? Right? I mean, think about this too. I was talking about this the other day. Do the Arab governments want Gaza to thrive? I mean, thank you, Charles. Imagine a democratic Gaza that actually was doing really well economically, thriving with Palestinians. What does that do to the kingdom of Jordan? If you've got a democracy next door that's doing really well, an Arab democracy, what does that do to the dictatorship in Egypt? The coup, that you've got a thriving democracy next door. What does that do to Hamas and Hezbollah? That you've got, again, a thriving democracy that is not religious crazy, that it's not religious fundamentalists, right? That you've got a sort of normal religious people and they're doing really well. They're normal Muslims. They're not radical Muslims, and they're doing so. I mean, you've got that issue too. This is just a theory of mine because the reason I think about it, it's funny with the Ukraine stuff. The reason I think about it is because one of the issues with Ukraine is that Russia couldn't afford to have a thriving Ukraine on its border. A Ukraine that joins the West. A Ukraine, I hear you, Sash, 1 second, my dog wants water. A Ukraine that joins the West. A Ukraine that is growing economically. A Ukraine that is Slavic like Russia. Now, the Ukrainians tell you they're not Russians, of course, but a lot of the Russians think, oh, Ukraine's our brother. Well, your brother is free and prospering and joining the West and joining the European Union, and they're doing great. And look at Russia. Half of you don't even have toilets, right? That doesn't send a great message if you're running the dictatorship in Russia. It just got me thinking of Gaza and the Palestinians, because there's some reason that the Arab governments don't really care about the Palestinians either. And I don't know what it is, but they don't necessarily care either. I hear you. Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to go. Again, not doing Discord because we've gone for an hour and 45 minutes. Sorry, Gunther. But we've gone long, and I still worry about my voice in the end. But and my hair exploding. But thank you, guys. I'm going to sign off. I'll see you guys tomorrow, Thursday, 6:00 Eastern, as always. And do follow me on TikTok and YouTube and everywhere else. And I will see you all tomorrow, 6:00 Eastern. Remember, time's a little different in America this week. We don't change our clocks until next week. So right now it's 7:45 p.m. at night. All right. Thank you, guys. This was fun as always. Mods, thank you for getting rid of the trolls. Well, see, I always like this part where we end up having a good mix of people, because this is the fun part where even like on TikTok, I've got a lot of Israelis. I've got a lot of, I don't know if there's a lot of Arabs, but there's a lot of Palestinian defenders, but people are being sane. And those are the kind of conversations I enjoy. So disagreeing is fine. I just want nice people disagreeing. So, all right, Jerrio, 1145. All right, guys. And I'll see you all tomorrow, okay? Thank you again for everything, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, mods. Love you. Someday it'll get easier, mods. All right, see you guys. I'm going to go give my dog water now.